Hi everyone, and tonight I will be talking about my presentation regarding exploring various funding resources for my dream music therapy job. And I apologize, I am not showing my face on my webcam. I am very tired and mangled and I'm everywhere, so you just get to hear my voice. So starting out, my dream job, I would love to be in Wisconsin, in state. And if not, I'd love to be somewhere on the West Coast, Arizona, California, or Oregon. Those are all states that my family is very familiar with, or we have close family ties. My brother, his wife, and son all live in Oregon. My family has recently traveled to Arizona the past 4 years, and we have a lot of family in California. I think California might be a little hard, but my dream job would definitely be centered around geriatric hospice or palliative care. I just have a love for helping the elderly, and I know that's where I want to be. I love to be in a facility that's somewhat familiar with music therapy, not a place that is maybe starting from scratch. If that would be the case, I would have to accept it and go with it and just kind of learn from it. I feel like it'd be a great learning experience, learning module, but I'd love to be at somewhere that has previously had music therapy or music therapists. Probably the same thing. Don't know what I'm saying. Um, Funny one. A facility with clear communication. Um, what I should have elaborated in the PowerPoint when I said clear communication, meaning that you can talk face to face with your coworkers or your employers, your boss, your directors, in person often. Not everything is by email or electronically. Although the world is changing and changing day by day, so you don't really know. But just where a place where everybody can understand one another. Okay, so when I did the reading that was posted on Moodle, and I looked at the various public programs, and the first one that kind of caught my eye was private insurance. And according to this reading, there are companies such as Blue Cross, Blue Shield, United Healthcare, and there were a couple other providers listed. And all these places have paid for music therapy services at some point in time, which is great. They are aware what it does. And stated private insurance in hospice care roughly covers medical equipment related to the patient's terminal diagnosis, including wheelchairs, hospital beds, walkers, as well as short-term in-care if needed to help just kind of cope their symptoms related to their terminal diagnosis. And there are many more listings. That was on a separate researched article that I found. And according to the National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization website, music therapy helps hospice patients and families. That's a very broad statement. I am aware of that. But this website, I encourage you all to, if you have a second, research it. Because they gave so many great stories and so many great examples. One was an elderly gentleman who they never thought would walk again, speak again, basically respond. And after the first assessment that the music therapist came in and did, he opened his eyes and he tried to clap. And going to be working with these patients, that's kind of a very touching moment right there. And they just listed so many. And that's kind of a way to persuade the insurance company to fund music therapy. And I should have mentioned that this family was fairly poor and they needed funding, and eventually they received it. So I like to keep private insurance in the back of my mind. It might be very hard to kind of obtain, but there's always a way of working things out. This next one is the Prospective Payment System, otherwise referred to as PPS. And according to this reading, although music therapy does not receive direct reimbursement from Medicare for services provided, music therapists can be included as part of the package as covered under the PPS, within skilled nursing facilities and nursing homes and other various settings, including inpatient rehab settings. And some hospice and palliative care facilities, well, actually a lot of them, have several buildings and units, including patient rehabilitation settings. The facility that I recently interviewed to be an intern at, and where I will be going back for another interview, is very big in the rehabilitation setting, and that is where my grandmother unfortunately passed away. But it's crazy how God works in mysterious ways. Otherwise, the inpatient rehabilitation facilities stated that the 2010 Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services regulations for inpatient rehab facilities identified music therapy as a service that can be a part of the total rehab program, thus a part of the daily Medicare prospective payment system. So it can work. Anything's possible. So I found a couple CPT codes that would be applied to my population. I found a couple other ones, but this presentation would be fairly long if I talked about all of them, and I would love to talk about all of them, but I can't. So the first one was the very first one that was listed, and that is therapeutic procedure, one or more areas each 15 minutes. And the description that the article gave is that therapeutic exercises to develop strength and endurance, as well as range of motion and flexibility. So when I think of this, I think of an intervention, a music therapy intervention that I've seen a couple times. I actually saw it in DevDiz and in my geriatric clinical, and it's sometimes hard to believe that you see the same intervention almost done in two different populations. But what it was is, if I can roughly remember, is that the music therapist would be sit directly facing the client or in the same vicinity, and it would kind of be like working on extension where the arms would cross over while singing along or while doing this exercise to recorded music and humming along, kind of just so that the client can get like some motor skills with flexing and passing and whatnot. The next one, the second music therapy intervention for this CPT code, is kind of stretching to the music. Something else that I saw observing a clinical situation is where it was almost like a follow the leader type intervention where the music therapist would demonstrate certain exercises to do that she knew the client would be capable of doing and would have them follow for so long. And this would probably be under 15 minutes, I would say. You don't want to overwork the client, so it's definitely considering their age into factor. The second and final CPT code that I have chosen is the treatment of speech. The description states this treatment of speech, language, voice, communication, and or auditory processing disorder. The first music therapy intervention is you say blank and I say blank. So it's kind of like you say one word and I say another word. Like if I say, you say broccoli, and then I say broccoli, you're really working to articulate with the client. And if the client can't really say it or speak it, you take it slower. And there may be a good potential possibility that it won't work the first time. I saw this in my interview when I was observing a client last week who has been doing music therapy for probably 6 or 7 years in this home. And the music therapist showed me the progress of the client, how she was able to articulate all these words after her stroke, and I was flabbergasted. And that's kind of where I got both of these interventions from, was from this music therapist. The second music therapy intervention is articulation through vocal improvisation. Kind of you begin either playing little guitar riffs or keyboard arpeggios and chords, and the music therapist just starts humming, trying to prompt the client to hum, and eventually gradually get certain syllables in there to words that could be relatable to the client. Then they start to branch off of that, and then over time, their projection and their speech will hopefully improve. Unfortunately, it always does not. It sometimes does not. I'm sorry. Okay, the final part of my presentation for the services is the possible perception of duplication of services. And the main question here is, how does music therapy serve as a potent treatment modality for my population addressed? Well, for my population addressed, music and music therapy could be one of the last things that a client has before they pass on. And that's one of the bigger reasons why I want to be involved in this area. And that you can make a strong case for that when wanting services or funding or grants. Because if a client has had music all their life and that's the last thing they get, I can't imagine anything greater than them being with their family and friends. Another example being, during my geriatric clinical, I think the third or fourth week, I saw a gentleman who loved John Denver. He absolutely loved John Denver, and about half the songs during that half-hour session were John Denver. And the music therapist told me weeks later that this individual passed away while I was still in this rotation of clinicals, and she said the facility told her that all he could talk about was John Denver and the music he wrote until he passed away. And just to be a part of that, I can't even imagine. And I'm excited. It'll be sad at some points, but I'm very excited to go out there and help people. Well, thank you, everybody. Hope you all have a great rest of your week. Stress-free. Just relax and sit back and don't stress. Have a good night.